Welcome to the Equipping Leaders podcast. I'm Natasha, and my goal is to equip leaders with tools to make their leadership journey easier and more expansive. Today, I'm focusing on when feedback conversations go wrong. You could do everything quote unquote perfectly, and a feedback conversation can still go wrong. This does not mean that you're bad at giving feedback or that you need to abandon the feedback. Now, with that in mind, it's valuable to remember that we should consistently practice giving feedback because we can never truly master it. There are just too many people, too many situations, and too many environments to ever truly be a master at giving and receiving feedback. When we think about feedback conversations gone wrong, there are probably a lot of different things that come to mind. So, people who don't take the feedback and get defensive or fight the feedback, people who are surprised by the feedback, people shut down and become disengaged at work, and people who double down on other efforts to prove you wrong. So let's talk about what you can do as a leader in each of these situations. And I will say, I'm going to talk about some of these today, and then some will also be for tomorrow's episode. So we'll start with the one I get the most questions about. And that's when people don't take the feedback and instead get defensive about it or want to fight with you on it. This is pretty common. If we think about the human reaction when threatened, one of those reactions is to fight. So some people give into that lizard brain response and they just come out swinging. Sometimes what people need is just time and space to process the feedback that they're given. I have found that when I go into a feedback conversation, I'll start with, I'm going to give you some feedback, and then highlight how it lines up with their role and other goals. And that tends to soften people a bit right at the start. You are their leader and you do care about them, which is why you're giving them the feedback. Right? So if we consider the work of Kim Scott in Radical Candor, she talks about how we have to care deeply or care personally and challenge directly. And when we're doing both of those things when we give feedback, we remember that people can get defensive or start to fight the feedback, but we still don't meet them at that level, right? We are still having that radical candor and really showing up for them. You, as the leader, are here to deliver the feedback that will take them to where they want to go in their career. So you've given someone feedback and they get defensive or they want to fight about it. So you will still want to emphasize that the feedback is not something for them to defend. You're giving them examples so they have a reference point, not a counterpoint. So focus them and yourself on what's next. How do we move forward from this point? Sometimes to be mentally aware, to be mentally aware of when a person feels defensive about feedback, they could also go into a place of blame and manipulation. They'll blame you and other team members for why they're not performing, and then they can use manipulation to try to get a little jab at you. Once again, going back to you should decide how you show up, don't engage on those things. You're the leader, and leaders don't engage in pettiness, right? They shut it down. In my experience, how someone responds to feedback can be more telling than many other things. No one in the world is above reproach. So when someone gets information about their performance and their default response is to fight you about it or ignore it, how do they expect to get better? This is something to keep in mind for ourselves as we're getting feedback too. This is information about someone else's experience of us. And when we invalidate their experience with our feelings in the moment without taking the time to reflect, we're not being good leaders or good stewards of our organizations. So tomorrow, I'll share more on how to approach feedback conversations gone wrong. Thanks for listening.